Happy New Year from us here at Make a Difference. I'm Jared Phillips with Phil Martelli, and we have a lot to get to today, including an amazing guest, a lot of college hoops talk, and really the front and center of it all now is leaning into conference play as we begin to kind of get things rolling here in the college hoops landscape.
Yeah, it seems like we warmed up, and we've had some great games and great competitions, some really innovative scheduling, both on the men's and the women's side of the sport. Conference play is different. It feels different. Some conferences have played a couple of games. The Big Ten played 2 games before Christmas. But if you start to talk to coaches, you can feel there's a different sense about it. There's a different anxiety level. And so some of the ideas when you enter conference play, and this would go for a high school situation moving into their league play. Scouting is easier, but it's more intense. It's easier because you have an awareness of the styles that you're going to face. It's a little bit easier because you know the players in most cases, even with the additions in the transfer portal. You're familiar with these players. A lot of them you've recruited when you're in an Atlantic 10, when you're in the Big East. So you have this familiarity with the players. You have a tremendous amount of focus now on special situations because sideline out of bounds, end of shot clock, baseline out of bounds, what are they going to do at the end of the half? All of those special situations you have to be aware of, but you also have to practice. So coaches are adding. Just amazed me, my time in the Big Ten, how much was added when you got to conference play in terms of special situations. The games will follow a pattern now. Wednesday, Saturday. Some cases now Tuesday, Saturday. Maybe they're sprinkling in a lot of Friday night opportunities, but it's not all over the place. When you're doing non-conference scheduling, you're fitting it in to fit academics plans. What's the best travel situation? Where are the opportunities for us to play? But now you get into a rhythm. The Big 12 going to play 20 conference games. Wednesday, Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday. Mix in a Tuesday. But you have a different kind of flow to your schedule. Road games are familiar, right? You're familiar with the venues. You're familiar with the hotels where you're staying. You're familiar as to what time will we get on the court for shoot around. It's really an interesting dynamic when you go on the road because it is challenging. The noise makes it challenging. The environments make it challenging, but you do get a little bit more comfortable because you know the venues, you know the bus drivers, you know the security guards. With the start that many of the Power 4 leagues, take the Power 4 and the Big East, with the start that they've had, they have very gaudy records. There's now a little bit more of a pressure on those next level leagues, the Atlantic 10, the WCC, the Mountain West, because the power leagues have built up their at-large resumes with these records. You're now in a situation, if you are a lead in your league, you cannot afford a misstep. And it's hard anywhere to win on the road, but in those leagues, there's a lot of pressure. And you think, well, that's not till March, but that does play a role in making sure that your lead teams show up every night. And then this, home wins in league are a must. Road wins in a league are gold. That's what we're now looking for. We got a lot of teams out there looking for gold.
You touched on it a little bit, and I'd love to hear this. 35 years in the A-10, another 5 in the Big Ten. What kind of change, what kind of shift was that for you, seeing the way they operate in conference play in the Big Ten versus the A-10?
Wow, that's a really good question. My first time through the Big Ten, everything was big arenas, big staging for games, a lot of atmosphere. In the Atlantic 10, and the beauty about the Atlantic 10 and what should be celebrated about the Atlantic 10 is on Wednesday night, you could play in a gym, Rose Hill, right? For a long time, Alumni Memorial Field House at St. That was days were gyms. Olean, that's a gym at the Riley Center. And then Saturday, you could be playing St. Louis's arena, Dayton Arena. Richmond did a spectacular job of building up there. VCU, that's an arena. So in the Big Ten, everything's big. The arenas are big, fan bases are big. In the Atlantic 10, the differences of where you're playing your games, that was really, really interesting. There's another nugget that goes with this. When you get into conference play, you may get a referee a second, third, and fourth time during conference play. There's a comfort in that. You might hold your head in your hands and say, but you know what? And I mean this respectfully. It's not a knock. But the devil that you know is better than the devil that you don't know. So that's the way I look at it.
Depends on how much you're getting on that guy's nerves, though. I don't know.
I am not saying that the referees are. I'm just.
I like the phrase. I think it's taken in well meaning. I get exactly what you mean there. Speaking of all this college hoops talk, we have someone that's going to be able to break down a lot of awesome stuff for us. Just as the game continues to shift, he's really, I would say, a figurehead and a leader in the game right now. We're going to get to that in a moment, but of course, we got to touch on the Martelli Minute.
The Martelli Minute. Phil_Martelli on Instagram. Brought to you by Status Solutions. Status Solutions Network is committed to making a difference by providing Alicia Law compliant safety technology to schools through a grant of use, ensuring that financial barriers never stand between students and proper safety. Each community has the power to create real change in their schools. Learn more at statussolutions.com. Ready? Martelli Minute. Prepare for the challenges that are inevitable to come your way. None of us are going through this on the same plane, on the same path, day after day after day. Challenges are going to come. They're inevitable. Are you preparing? Be committed. Be honorable to the choices you make and the things you do. Saying and doing what you said you're going to do for others. That's commitment. And that's what people can expect and should expect from you. In times of stress, search for small signs of peace and joy. Oftentimes, they are hiding in plain sight. So no woe is me. We want to change that to wow, this is for me. Those are your Martelli Minutes.
Terrific stuff as always. And we always want to give a shout out to Status Solutions for being a partner with the show. And you want to welcome on this week's guest. He's quite a doozy.
Well, Craig Robinson is the executive director of the NABC, the National Association of Basketball Coaches. My understanding is that we're somewhere over 4,000 coaches. So this is every coach. High school coach, join the NABC. Junior college coach, the NAIA coaches, Division III, Division II, Division I. And Craig Robinson is the executive director. He is over all. So he is not just a guy who is connected with John Calipari, who is the president. Craig is the executive director, all things basketball. Terrific player at Princeton. Really good player at Princeton. And I have to wonder if he has some remembrances of the great building that is the Palestra. Coached by Pete Carrill, Hall of Famer, right? Everybody out there, even the casual fan, when you say Princeton offense, they recognize it. Well, Craig was in the middle of that for his career at Princeton. He has impacted people's lives from the sideline to the boardroom, from the playgrounds to the NCAA offices in Indy. A special guy who willingly shares and touches everybody that he meets. And he is an extraordinary listener. In a world today full of noisemakers, Craig Robinson has an uncanny ability to listen, which makes him an extraordinary leader of the coaching profession. So welcome aboard, Craig. Thank you for making a difference with us today.
Oh, Phil, thank you. That was a wonderful, heartfelt, and introduction. I'm honored to be here with you, my friend, and Jared. It's great to meet you, and excited for our chat.
Craig, we'd like to start. We have a series of questions, but the first and the last have stayed consistent.
Okay.
And if you could, where did Craig Robinson come from? How did you land today as executive director of the NABC?
Well, Phil, thanks for that, and it's a long story because I'm getting up there in years. But I like most of us who ended up in sports or coaching or sports administration. I didn't set out to be a coach. I grew up on the south side of Chicago. My parents were not college educated. So my goal was just to go to college, right? And I was fortunate enough to attract the attention of Princeton in high school. And I had no idea what that would mean to my life. And I would start by saying that going to Princeton it changed the trajectory of my life. And that had everything to do with basketball, because if it wasn't for this wonderful game, I would not have applied to Princeton and tried to get in. So that's first and foremost. And secondly, you mentioned Coach Kirill. I mean, being able to play for someone like that. I've had a lot of coaches in my day, and a lot of them have contributed to my success and helped guide me to where I am today. But Coach Kirill was such a big part of my life, kind of like you are to your former players, Phil. I just learned so much about things off the court with the use of his basketball knowledge, hard work, the importance of being present. To your point, being committed in the Martelli minute, you talked about being committed and knowing what that commitment was, because in high school we all thought we were committed to this game until you got to college and realized, oh my gosh, I'm behind everybody. I don't know what this is all about. And then the relationships you develop on the court and in the classroom and the places you've been. So I fell in love with the game really as a kid, but never thought I would be working in it as an adult. And I graduated from Princeton. I got a chance to play overseas for a couple of years and came back and started working in corporate America and thought that was going to be my play. But when I came back from playing ball in Europe, I didn't know what I was going to do, and I got into investment banking. But what I was doing on the side, I was coaching young people in youth basketball. Now it's blossomed into AAU coaching, and I thought, okay, if I can make enough money early in my career, when I get to be 45, 50 years old, I'm going to retire from corporate America and I'm going to teach 7th grade and coach high school basketball. And that was my plan until Coach Bill Carmody, who was an assistant at Princeton when I was there, became the head coach at Northwestern, which is in my hometown of Chicago, just north in Evanston, Illinois. He offered me a job to be an assistant coach with him, and that started my coaching career. And I spent almost 15 years coaching. I coached with Coach Carmody for 6 years. I coached at Brown University as the head coach for a couple of years, and then I was at Oregon State for another 6 years. So I was that's how I got into college coaching. And as a college coach, I was like you, I was a member of the NABC, and the NABC fought the fight for all of us coaches, and I wasn't any different from anybody else. I attended the convention at the Final Four, and was when asked, I would do clinics. I would do my part, and I always thought, boy, if we could really organize ourselves, we'd be a real force in the college game. And so then I went on to work in the NBA for about 5 years, and this job opened up, and I spent time talking to the board and ended up taking this job, and that's how I ended up in this seat today. So a little bit of a longer story, but I couldn't be more honored and more proud to be in this seat, especially during these incredible times.
And that's where I want to go. Incredible times for sure. And you came into the profession. There are a lot of young people out there that come through the front door.
Right.
And when they come through the front door, they want to go to the master bedroom immediately, and they don't want to like sleep on a couch. And
right.
I'm not knocking them. I get it. I get it. And I can appreciate it. But if you were to describe 2 or 3 of the differences when you broke in at Northwestern to where the coaching profession is today, and I'm not just saying Division I, but our game, our profession, Craig, what do you feel like are major differences?
Wow. Well, the major, obviously, the big elephant in the room is when I was coming along, both as a player and early on as a coach, the idea of using basketball to further your college education was the number one priority of everyone. It was the schools, the coaches, the administration, the players, the parents. You saw this as an opportunity to get your education paid for. And for a lot of us who come from backgrounds where we don't save for college, right? You're living day to day. So you're hoping that you get some assistance for college. That was the game plan back then. And today, what I see and what I saw at the end of my coaching career and what I see now is that now it's viewed as a way to earn a living. And that's a huge difference. And we can talk about this a little bit more, because there's a big difference for these players that what I'm seeing, they don't understand the difference between being a student athlete and being a professional athlete. Everybody thinks they can be a pro, and I'm here to tell you, having both been a pro player and worked with pros, it's a different proposition. So the educational piece is lost now. So I will say that, number one. Number two, with regard to that educational piece, I remember even the guys who had the toughest times that I both played with and against, as well as coached when I was coaching. When you got a college degree, it meant something, right? Like you could use that to get a job. You were college educated. What we have now, and what I see a lot of today, is we have figured out how to get people college degrees, but they are not college educated, guys. They're not prepared for the work world. And I think that's the huge disservice that's being missed in all of this talk about NIL and transfer and money and pro this and all of that.
I mean, you talked about it quite a bit, and I think one thing that maybe gets misconstrued here as well, you brought up an incredible point about people are getting college educations, but they may not be college educated. And on the flip side, I think it should be reiterated where a lot of coaches and a lot of people in college athletics, I think, believe and stand by the fact that they want players to be properly compensated for the I would say the value they produce in the college game. There just needs to be a balance and a regulation behind what is allowing it to happen. I think that's something we can agree on, right? Where if a player is filling in an arena because he's that terrific of a player, he should get an opportunity to profit off of that. But there needs to be a balance where I would say it doesn't become kind of a runaway train in many programs. I don't know if that's a sentiment everyone agrees on, but I feel like that feels, I would say, a largely, I would say, agreed upon principle.
Yeah, Jared, and I would echo that, and I would say that sentiment is felt by most of our coaches. All right, like most of our coaches realize that there should be some compensation for what's being generated from our student athletes and our programs. I think there are a couple of things that are hindering the process from a coach's standpoint, and one is you don't know what your roster is going to look like each year. Now it's starting like you don't, and Coach Martelli has talked about this. You don't know what your roster is going to look like next week sometimes, given what's going on with players and the ability of them to move around. So I think that's number one. And then the second thing is transparency, right? Like it would be helpful if we all were on a level playing field with regard to what NIL contracts were or NIL agreements are worth, right? So that it doesn't become sort of an arms race with people with no arms, right? So I think those are I agree with you, Jared. I think everybody agrees that okay, this is now moved from sort of an academic and eligibility type issue into sort of a professional realm and a profit making, money making. So all who are contributing should be compensated. But we sort of need some guidelines or people have used the term guardrails a lot. And I think it starts with, let's just have a contract with these kids so we know so both sides know what they're owed and what they are supposed to provide. And I think that would be a great start.
And Craig, you and I have had numerous conversations in a lot of different settings about this. We in the game, we the leaders of the game, we the leaders at our schools are responsible for these players' well-being. So are they financially aware of the challenges that come with the money? The people from the outside that will want a little piece of really what is not life-changing money in most cases, but it changes their situation at this moment. Are they aware of taxation? Are they aware of building goodwill by including a financial a charitable wing to what they're doing? And I use this all the time. Let's pick a number and let's say that there's a young man at Wyoming and he's getting $100,000 to play football, basketball, whatever it would be. And he doesn't work out professionally and he decides to go into banking and they say, we'll hire you at the bank for $70,000. Well, this young guy has not paid rent. He's not paid for a meal and he's not paid for any gear for 4 or 5 years. Do we have him prepared for real life? I don't know and I'm not a doom and gloom guy. I'm just, that's to me where we have to become, we the leaders of the game, the leaders at institutions have to become more accountable in that area, Craig.
Yeah, I agree with you, Phil. And I also I want to make a couple of points because Phil makes a great point. And Jared, you may or may not know this. You know, our coaches all the way up and down the compendium, from guys like Phil who are high major Division I coaches down to the high school coaches, we're with these student athletes every day. And we are probably the best ones suited for guidance. Yet when these decisions are being made, we're not involved. They're not letting us in the room. And Phil makes a great point, because I think and I see that this is not life-changing money. I mean, maybe there's a quarterback out there who gets a deal that sets him up and he doesn't have to worry about it. But there's not many basketball players who are getting that kind of money, at least not yet. And we are, if without this sort of guidance, we are setting these kids up to fail, because to Phil's point, this will be the most money you make in your entire life, most likely, for 85 to 90% of these guys and girls. Because when you come out and you take that first entry level job, which I had one, it is nowhere near this amount of money. And for our coaches to be there every day, to be able to talk about this is what I miss about not coaching. Is you guys were talking about the conference games in the open. My favorite part about conference play was being on the road, away from home, where we all are in the same room eating together. We've got our phones over on the tray in the corner, and we're talking about things like financial awareness and what's going to happen in real life when you take that first job, and how a $70,000 salary is really a $35,000 salary, and you've got to make do, because you haven't had to pay rent, and you haven't had to pay a car note, and you haven't had to pay for insurance, and you haven't had to pay taxes.
Craig, I mean, that is spot on. And you know, it's funny. I was just thinking about, you know, a month or so ago, we had your co-host on, Coach Cal, and he said very similar things. And one thing that always stuck with me is, like, we have a situation where every year everyone is a free agent and there's no salary cap, and that, I think, sums it up to the highest degree. And the one thing that you mentioned, and Phil, you mentioned as well, is just the idea of almost having a mandatory class or instruction for these student athletes to learn how to manage their money. Not only works in this NIL era, but it feels like it's probably a very useful tool and necessity, even in any era, right? Because I just think it's such a valuable thing that everyone should be learning, is just the best way to manage their money, whether it comes from the NIL or whether it comes from somewhere else.
Yeah, Jared, you're too young to know this. Phil remembers this. When we were in high school, they had courses called home economics, where they
Yes.
actually taught you the economics of a household, and that was your introduction to financial awareness and financial literacy, and it's gone by the wayside of, you know, physical gym and art, right? Like, we miss that, and it should start in the high schools. It should start in the grammar schools and sort of be taught all the way through. So I'm with you there.
And for everybody out there, and this is just an editorial, no matter what you think of Deion Sanders, the football coach, check out his response to a question in his bowl game post-game press conference. They said to him, "What needs to change?" And his answer: financial literacy classes. So everybody thinks he's all about just collecting all the bling and the dollars. He was preaching. Craig, I need you to preach here.
Okay.
I need you to preach. It's not your style, but you have this awesome leadership role, and you've had it at many places. There's young people that we want to impact on, make a difference. What's a piece of advice that you would give to young leaders, not young coaches, but young leaders? That's what we want. That's who we want to impact with this podcast. So what is a great piece of leadership advice?
Phil, the best one of the things that I'm noticing with this cohort of young people coming along is they have access to way more information than we ever did, thanks to technology. So but they aren't using it to its fullest because they're stuck in their devices. And the world is a world of communication. And what I would say to young people who want to be leaders is really focus on two things. One, your communication ability, not just skills, but ability. The ability to put your phone down, look up uh, from your laptop and your iPad and all the devices you have, and be able to engage with people on a personal level. I think that is still a tremendous way of getting your point across. And I have found nothing better that has been successful for me than being unafraid to free and clearly walk up to people I don't know, introduce myself, and engage them in conversation. The second thing to that point is then you start building your network, because that's how you, number one, get ahead. Number two, you get things done. And number three, it leads to making an impact. And uh, and building a network is a skill, right? It is a job. And you have to have a network if you're a coach, and you have to have a network if you're a bond trader on Wall Street. You have to know people, be able to communicate and get your point across and follow up. And that's those things I think are missing in our young people because they avoid it by looking at their phones. And you can do both. Because I've learned to look at my phone. I was not a technology guy. I've learned to be a technology person and a social media person and all of that. So you can do both. You can be a 5-tool player.
Craig, I'll tell you what, it's not just the young kids. I can't get this guy off his phone. I swear, 70 years old and he's hooked. He's hooked to his smartphone. I swear.
I don't know.
Well, when you're coaching, if you want to connect with these young folks, you better know how. And I know Phil's like he's a Renaissance man, right? So he knows how to you know what? And I'm going to pay you another compliment. Phil is a connector, because there aren't very many people who have been in the leadership position that he's been in. He's been at the top of our profession, and then moves without any effort to being a supporting cast when you were at Michigan as an assistant coach, and you were sort of a consigliere to the staff there. I just think that is something that I'm sure you guys have talked about on this show, but if you haven't, that is something that young people need to understand. Is sometimes leadership comes from the person who's not at the top.
Great point. Craig, Jared's hearing this, but this is what I've always felt. You have always had a collaborative spirit in this position as the executive director. And as I mentioned in your introduction, one of the best listeners that I've been around. And that is a communication skill. We've talked about that on this podcast. The communication skill is having the ability to listen, not having the ability to respond all the time or think you have to respond. Listen. How did that come to be for Craig Robinson? How, when, where, what was that? Something at home? Was it in school? How has that developed?
Well, I appreciate the compliment and the question, and I can tell you right where that came from. That came at the dinner table growing up in my house, and there were only 4 of us there. So it wasn't like I had a big a big immediate family, right? I had your 2 parents, I had my sister, who everybody knows, and it was me. And even with just the 4 of us at the table, you could think you had the best ideas or best discussion and tried to talk over people. And my parents were like, you will find out more information from people if you let them talk.
Wow.
That was taught at our kitchen table. And my parents are both passed now, but God bless their soul. That was one of those things that was, again, that changed the way I operated, because we have a tendency, and especially in this day and age, where everybody's doing podcasts and everybody's doing talking and everybody has a platform. And my dad used to say, I find out more from people when I just keep my mouth shut. And he's right. And the collaboration part just comes from growing up in a household where my parents, even before we got into sports, they were team players, right? They were collaborative parents. They weren't afraid to say they weren't sure about something to us as children, which, if Phil, you remember back in the day, most parents were like, it's my way or the highway. My parents were like, that's a good question, Craig. Let me find out the right answer. I don't want to give you the wrong answer. And then they come back and say, I talked to your uncle so and so, or I talked to grandma, and so this is how we're going to handle this. And so this was all learned behavior as a kid, and I tried to pass this along to my children. I tried to pass it along to my teams when I coached. It is learned behavior, and it's really easy when I'm in a room full of really smart coaches. What has made me feel so proud about being in this job is that I understand what a lot of people don't, because somewhere along the line, coaches went from being this sort of exalted teacher position to being like a commercial business. But we have a group of coaches in our organization that are some of the smartest people. And it's really easy to listen to these guys, take their ideas, and come up with the best ones. And that's why I'm fighting so hard to have coaches in these meetings that will solve some of the problems that we're talking about today. You're not going to be able to do it if you don't have any coaches in the room.
And the coaches that go in have to be willing listeners. That's one of the things that Craig has brought to the organization, is that people are willing to listen to each other. For a long time, there was a lot of pontification that went on. Now there is this collaborative spirit. So, Craig, you open the door, so we have to go through this door and make a difference. You have to tell us, when did the family dynamic change from everybody being identified as Craig Robinson's sister to you becoming Michelle Obama's brother? When did that all occur? Was it the election? Was it while Barack was making his way up? Was it Michelle, her extraordinary academic record in the Ivy League? What made that change, Craig? And how do you handle it?
Yeah, that, I have to give you kudos, because in doing this now myself, I'm always amazed at when somebody can ask me a question that I haven't been asked before. And this is one, because I haven't thought about the actual time that it happened. But I will tell you, it probably happened when she made her first national speech at the convention. And people were like, whoa, why isn't she running for president? Right. I think that was when people were like, oh, this Michelle Obama is like, she's a force of her own. And that was when I started walking through the airport or walking through arenas, and people would be like, you're Michelle Obama's brother, aren't you? And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, I am. And so here's a little tidbit, guys. My sister would hate being Craig Robinson's little sister. She hated it. She hated it because everywhere she'd go, all my friends, the basketball community, everybody is like, that's Craig's little sister. That's Craig's little sister. And everywhere she went, she followed me to Princeton, Craig's little sister. She was probably glad that I left so she could have some boyfriends, because nobody wanted to date her when I was there. And now she's just paying me back in spades, Phil, because it's a mess. I can't go anywhere with this face because we look just alike. We look absolutely alike, and people but thankfully people are so wonderful. They're so gracious. They think the world of her. And so therefore me
As
and
well they should.
yeah. So I couldn't be more thrilled. And it really does take some of the pressure off of being my mom's favorite, right? So
Right. Well,
admittedly,
we can't let him.
I got
Go
one
ahead.
more for you. I'm sure you've been asked this, but I wanted to get your take here on our show. I know it's kind of storied that you know, when Barack began courting Michelle, you had the chance to I guess get a feel for him, and the best way you knew to do that was play some hoops with him. I'd love to get the scouting report on Barack. I mean, what'd
well,
you think?
well, Jared, first of all, it was I refused to do it initially because my sister was sending me to do her dirty work, right? She wanted me to vet him because she would hear my dad and me talk about how you can tell a person's personality by playing pickup basketball with them. Like we talk about that all the time at the kitchen table, and she's noodling this away, and so she started to get serious with this guy, and she's like, "Hey, will you mind? He plays basketball. Do you mind taking him to play with you guys and tell me what you think?" And I was like, "No way. I am not doing your dirty work." Because see, I was worried that he might turn out to be a jerk and I have to tell her, and then that's the end of that, right? Well, thankfully, Jared, it was a wonderful experience. And the scouting report on him is, and Phil will get this, he's a real lefty, right? Like he can't go right. He is left-handed shooter, left-handed dribble, jumps off his right foot. He is not, he goes to the right, he takes one dribble, picks the ball up, goes to the left, he's pretty proficient. He can get to the basket, pull up jump shot, but it's just he's a lefty. Very unselfish. And the best part about it was, because see, you know, you got to figure, I the guys I played ball with are former players, like real dudes. So he was out there playing. He wouldn't just pass me the ball because I was his future brother-in-law, right? He just played the game normally. He gave up calls when he should have. He wasn't a hack. It was really a pleasant outing. So the rest is history. But I could have easily kiboshed the whole thing.
There you go. There's the rest of the story. Remember that call? You won't remember. Paul Harvey used to say, and that's the rest of the story. Right. This could go on and
Oh
on and
yeah,
on and on and on. And
absolutely.
we have to hit you with this question.
Okay.
Every guest that comes on, this is our final question. We have an idea already of the answer, but who's made a difference in Craig Robinson's life?
Oh, that's easy. My parents. My parents changed the trajectory of our whole family. And I'll give you the. There were so many moments where I could attribute this, but my character, my sister's character, our hard work, our intelligence, all came from our parents. But there was a point at which, Phil, where I was deciding on where to go to school, and my parents didn't go to college, so you know, I visited Princeton, I visited the University of Washington, which was in the Pac-8 back then, and DePaul was starting to recruit me very late, and my dad. It was time to make a decision, and this was when you made your decision after you went on your visits in your senior year, right? Like you didn't go on any visits as a junior. Nobody ever did that. And I said, we were at our kitchen table after dinner. My sister wasn't even in the room. My dad said, "So, man, where are you thinking?" And I said, "Well, I think I'm going to go to the University of Washington." And my dad did what he would do when you made the wrong decision. He looked up in the air and then he looked down and he rubbed his face from the forehead all the way down to his neck, and he pinched his neck and he went like this. Whenever he did that, you knew you made the wrong decision. And he calmly said to me, "How did you come up with that?" And I said, "Well, I thought I was going to be an engineer." I said, "They have a good engineering program. Um, I think by the time I'm a junior, I might have an opportunity to play and even start. And it's free. because they were offering a scholarship. And for most of your listeners out there, the Ivy League doesn't have scholarships. They have financial aid, and your family pays what they feel like you can afford. And they thought we could afford $1,900, which it seems like nothing now, but to a 16-year-old, because I was 16 at this time, turning 17, it sounded like $1 million.
Right.
And he said, this is what he said to me. He said, if you pick your school based on how much I have to pay, I'm going to be very disappointed. And my dad, when he was disappointed, the whole house was disappointed. This is a guy who had MS from the time I can remember. He walked with a limp that got progressively worse. He wore those crutches that wrapped around your arms, and he got up and he went to work for the city of Chicago every single day. So for him to say he was be disappointed, you had to rethink your whole life, right? So he said, take the night, think about it, and then we'll talk about it tomorrow. So I went to bed thinking, oh my God, he's disappointed in me. I don't know what to do. And so the next day, we're at the same dinner table trying to figure out. He said, so have you thought about what I said? And I said, yeah. And I said to him, you know, Dad, I actually liked Pritt. And before I could get out the instant, he went, slapped his hand on the table and said, fine, you'll go to Princeton. And that's how I ended up going to Princeton, which I said to you and the listeners earlier, it changed my life. I mean, it absolutely changed my life. So my parents were the ones who made a difference. And then the epilogue to that story, guys, is that after my dad died and before my mom died, we were going through some of her old paperwork, and I found this envelope, and my mom is like, give me that, don't look at that. And I opened this envelope, and it is maybe, I want to say 40 months of credit card receipts. My dad financed my education with credit cards. Never complained, never asked for any money back. I mean, it was the most selfless thing I could have ever imagined. And so you can see why those two made the difference for Craig Robinson.
Craig, I appreciate you. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Happy New Year. And let's remember, Craig, you and I have had this conversation. All of our coaches out there, all of our wannabe coaches out there, at 3:30, you put on sneakers and you go on a court. And for 3 hours, you're working with people that love a game that you love, that has given so much. And then after that, we can deal with the other things. But for right now, what we would ask everybody is do what Craig Robinson's father did for him. Go make a difference. Craig, thank you.
Thank you, guys, and have me back anytime, Phil. I think this is a great format and such great lessons and messages. Really appreciate you guys.
Greg, thanks so much, man. Appreciate you. We got to stop knocking out. You got to start hitting some singles. We've only been hitting home runs with every single guest that comes on, and I mean, Craig was unbelievable. Not just to dive right into really, I mean, the hard stuff right away, the things that are affecting college basketball, things that he has to think about all day, every day. He probably spends 16 hours a day thinking and talking about exactly what we grilled him with right off the top. So it was nice to kind of put our foot off the gas a little bit and hear some stuff about family as well. But like I said, that stuff is so vital. I mean, every day,
good man,
more news coming down. And no, like, yeah, I mean, Craig was, I mean, what a journey too. I mean, from someone who, you know, working in investment banking, I mean, making, you know, all the money you need to, just saying, I want to go follow what I love, and just finding every way he can to give back to the game.
Think about the areas that we didn't talk about. Palestra. I know he has great Palestra stories. We didn't talk about the playgrounds of Chicago, where I know he competed. Juwan Howard would talk to me often about playing against Craig on playgrounds, not gyms, but on playgrounds. So I'm delighted. That was they all exceed my expectations, which is kind of enjoyable.
No, it's absolutely fantastic, and it was great to hear from him, especially right around the holidays.
Yes.
That family dynamic, because that's the king of family dynamics. Right?
There we go.
How does that Christmas dinner table look? Right. I mean,
There
that was so fascinating to hear. Speaking of that Christmas dinner table, I hope you had a very nice Christmas. I got to see some of our extended family over the holiday break, which was nice. I hope you got to take it in. I know you guys did quite a few things over the holiday.
We did do a lot of things. So where was I? I have to make an announcement.
Okay.
I'm retiring from bricks and mortar shopping after my experience.
Oh no.
I have to retire. It may mean that there are no gifts, but I may just have to retire because I went and there was valet parking. Who ever heard of valet parking at a mall? There were people in line to get in a store, not in a store, but people in line to get in a store. And then I went into one particular store looking for one particular item. I wandered around the store. I got in a line that I thought was like a customer service line. I got to the head of that line and I was told to go see the client concierge if I wanted to set up a sales representative meeting
To buy
to
something.
to buy something. And I went to this concierge and I said, am I supposed to check in? They said, yes. You're 12th in line. It'll probably be about 35 minutes. And I was like, I'd rather go back online and buy 4 of them and return 3 like I had to do. So that's where I spent my time on.
You're doing a complete 180 here.
I know. I don't know what to do.
Are you sure you were at a shopping mall? It sounds like
Yes.
you were at a nightclub. There was a
no.
line to get in.
I
There
can't
was
remember.
valet parking.
That's my point. That's my point. But then I got back after wonderful Christmas. I got to drive to Bishop McDevitt High School in Harrisburg on Friday night to see the Mid-Penn Catholic School Christmas Showcase. The game that I went up to see was televised, which is really cool for high school players. Really good competition between Bishop McDevitt and Harrisburg and Pittsburgh Central Catholic. So people from different areas of the state getting together. I found this fascinating. In that game were 3 young men who had just 2 weeks prior played for state championships. So they were state champion finalists. Bishop McDevitt winning a state championship, Pittsburgh Central Catholic losing to St. Joe's Prep in their state championship. 3 young men that played in that game, 2 of them college committed, all willing to come off the bench for their high school team. That gave me a great sense of, you know what? This is still pure. This is still a pure thing. I came home Friday night. Saturday morning, I had to attend a viewing for a very, very close friend. Went back Saturday night to be the keynote speaker at their dinner. All the teams stayed, and we had a chance to interact with all of those teams. Very, very worthwhile 2 days and trips up and down the turnpike, and gave me a lot of time to think and scribble out ideas, and it was well worth it. Got a chance. I think you may have even played. I went to St. Agnes in Westchester, 66 teams in a Christmas tournament. 66 teams. I went to see 5th and 6th grade girls, with my granddaughter Madeline playing, but all over the place. They were playing all over Westchester. 66 teams, all levels, boys, girls, 5th and 6th, 7th and 8th.
Did they stick you in that upstairs gym, the third floor?
Oh,
one?
yes.
Oh,
yes.
that one.
Yeah,
that's bringing me back. That is bringing me back. Yes, Coatesville Catholic / Pope John Paul. We were I would say stalwarts in the St. Agnes Christmas tournament.
And then I got to go over to local school, St. Denis Cardinal Foley Elementary, and I saw the 5th and 6th grade girls championship game. St. Mary Magdalene edging out St. Denis, but it was just the feeling of being in the gym with the game and not with some of the surroundings that we all, Jim Larinaga retiring, and then the news about Leonard Hamilton today being sued. It still has to be about the game, and that's what I was able to do. So that's where I was. Now, where am I going?
Well, before that, I just want to give one quick shout out to Jeff Wechter and the Crusaders, by the way. State championships for Bishop McDevitt football once again. You were really in my neck of the woods there. You got to
Well, they talked
I think
about
you ran
you.
into a few ABC 27
They
people.
They talked to me about you.
Hope good things, I hope.
But now I'm not a New Year's Eve guy. I'm fascinated with the college football, seeing where that develops. But it's basketball now. It's basketball. I will attend a Drexel practice before they go on the road. They have 2 league games on the road, Thursday, Saturday. So I want to get to a practice to watch Zach Spiker and his group and how they're developing. Then on Thursday, I will go to Temple for Temple's practice, Wichita State's practice, prior to doing the game for ESPN on Friday night. Temple, Wichita State, Friday night. That's like old school, playing on a Friday night. It brings me back to the Catholic League and the opportunity that I had to play and to coach in that league. Saturday, how about this daily double? Saturday, I'm going to get an opportunity to visit Penn State when they're coming to town to play Indiana Sunday at the Palestra. So I'll visit with Penn State on Saturday night at their hotel after having visited with the UConn women's basketball team at their hotel, and visit with Gino Auriemma, obviously a dear friend. And I'm going to take young Madeline Jeffries, and she'll have a chance to meet Paige Beckers and that remarkable team at UConn.
That is going to be awesome for Madeline.
Sunday, Penn State, Indiana, best college basketball building, the Palestra, 12 o'clock tip for that game. Monday, 4:30 a.m. train to D.C. to do the next 3 shows of the Atlantic 10 magazine. Beyond the Paint, it's called. A10 Basketball, Beyond the Paint. And the topics are women's basketball, traditions and quirks and characters of the A10. And the third show I'm drawing a blank on. Oh, third show is very, very, very prominent to this time. And that is the effect of the NIL and the transfer portal on the A10 and beyond in college basketball. So we'll be joined with some unbelievable guests. Jay Billis is coming on, and Steve Lapis is coming on, and Dawn Staley is coming on, and some greats who have gone through the Atlantic 10. Susie McConnell was a great player in the Atlantic 10. Tammy Reese, who coaches at Rhode Island. It rattles off now that I remember those 3 shows. So we'll do that on January 6th in Washington, D.C. Hopefully with a different result than other January 6th that have recently happened in D.C. I guess we can say that.
I wasn't going to go there, but
it is. It did cause me to pause.
I mean, the headline is Phil Martelli is headed to D.C. on January 6th, but
we'll just keep it there.
Yeah, I got it.
And then if I could, I know we want to get to a wrap, but for everybody out there, Happy New Year. No resolutions for me, but for all, health and happiness. And that in all of your families, communities, we do all we can to eliminate loneliness and hopelessness. Let's all make a difference. Let's hope for everybody strength of mind, heart, soul, and body. That would be a great year.
Beautifully said. Let me wrap this up, of course, with letting us know who our next guest is going to be. Something, yeah. I know. A few more orders of business here, but man.
We have a baseball coach, inner city baseball coach, public league baseball coach, Juan is his story. He's a male, healthy male who has battled breast cancer. His story will chill you and will bring you to tears. And we are really anxious on January the 7th to bring him on our Make a Difference podcast.
Yeah. Juan Namnoon, Frankfurt High School baseball coach, male breast cancer survivor. I mean, he's going to be an unbelievable guest. Like I said, we are really only hitting homers on this podcast. Going to be fantastic to hear from him on Tuesday, the 7th. If you would love to get in touch with Phil, head on over to pnjmakeadifference.com. Tell Phil your story. He can fill you in on exactly what you can do, whether you want to make a difference in your classroom, on the basketball court, in your office, whatever you may want to do. He is hoping to really make a difference in all walks of life. If you like what you hear, go ahead and like and subscribe on YouTube, or give us a 5-star rating on Spotify, Apple, wherever you may be listening. We are at Make a Difference Pod on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and at Make a Diff Pod on X. We also Make a Difference with Phil Martelli on Facebook. If you like the Martelli Minute, head to Phil_Martelli on Instagram. That is where you can get your Martelli Minute every single day. Another terrific episode in the books, and really, we're not going to spoil them all, but we got a couple great ones coming down the pike here as well. But for now, another terrific one. We'll see you next week.